So we are right back into another Dragon Ball Super card game video, and this is going to be the closest that I will ever get, at least for this year, this season, to a NATS recap. And I am not alone. I am here with Radish. Hey Radish, what's up?
I mean, not too much, man. I'm just trying to get over a cold right now.
That's a bummer. Well, Radish is within our Discord. He went to Ohio into NATS. You can kind of explain everything, but what's your other name? Radiant Burrito, right?
Yeah, that was my old, that's an old tag that still floats around. I just kind of updated it within like the last 5-6 years. I know that sounds like a long time, but I've had the name forever.
For sure. Okay, well, just in case anybody wants to identify you, there you go. But basically what we're going to be going through is basically the deck that you took to Nationals, in which you were trying to qualify through the last chance qualifiers. And a little background that this is one of the decks that I was going to take to Nationals if I was going to go. So Radish, you can kind of explain the rest, right?
I mean, I pretty much approached you, and I said I wanted to take your Janemba mill deck that you hadn't really talked about yet. And Janemba is one of those decks that I'd been looking at, and with the way the meta was, I thought that would be a very good contender if you had a lot of Hercule running around and the Wish leaders, cycling through their decks really fast. So, contacted you and just wanted to see if you wanted to cough up those deets, and I would take the deck for you and see how it performs. Oh,
okay. Yeah, that's pretty much how it was. I firmly believe the same. Janemba was one of those things of when we talk walls or pillars, as some people may say it, or the meta decks to beat. It's one of those things that you have to consider going into this next format, or this current format. Can you beat Janemba? Can you defend against yourself in Janemba? What's your plan against it? And I think it was early enough for Nationals, especially after Set 5's release, a couple of weeks beforehand, for someone. Yeah,
I was gonna say I think it was only like a week.
Right.
Like the set released the week before, so unless you're on Untapped.
And way before then, I was testing this list for quite a while. It's when you actually see it, it is pretty standard. It is similar to a lot of different other lists, but the reason why I kind of wanted to go over it, and obviously you can go through it as well, are because the changes and the approach that you could go through forward for Janemba. But for you, you just kind of wanted to take it and just have fun with it, right? And
for the most part, yeah. I mean, the dream was qualifying. We didn't quite make it, but that's a spoiler.
Yeah, unfortunately. But we can kind of talk through that and see, what opportunities that you had, and maybe what we can kind of approach. Because originally for this, it's just very much of a stall deck. It's very much of you do your thing on your turn, and then they do their thing, but then end up not doing anything because you're just kind of stalling out. But Did it end up being that way too, or no?
Yeah, for the most part. Even the games where I lost, I think there was only one where I kind of got ran over, and that was the first time I ran into Storm. But that was because I didn't draw Crisis Crusher until it was too late. He already had a board full of Go-10s.
That makes sense. That is a bummer. And I think, oh no, we have it in there. Okay. Yeah, that is definitely a bummer. So. What else? What I was gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. I mean, this just the thought process throughout the deck. There's a lot of different ways to kind of approach it, but I think this is pretty much standard and pretty out there when it comes to just being a sort of staple list for Janemba, to me anyway. But for you, going back to you, Radish, how was the matchups? How did it perform? Were you satisfied, etc., etc.?
For the most part, I thought the deck ran great. When I was practicing with it, the little time I had before it gave me it even still does a little bit. It gives me a ton of anxiety because it's one of those decks where you feel like you're not doing anything for your first 3 turns. But then you kind of stabilize around turn 4, turn 5, and it sets that ease in, and they have to work to kill you, and you, even when you're tapped out, you still have options. So I eventually gained enough confidence while I was performing in LCQs that feeling mostly went away, and just trying to tackle over my, harder. Sorry, I had an issue there.
Oh, you broke up a little bit. What'd you say?
Oh, yeah. I was just saying that, eventually, as I got through more of my matches and LCUs, I got a lot more confidence getting through a lot of stuff, that feeling just as I knew what the game kind of looked like every time I went into something, and, it's just muscling my way through my tougher matchups was about all it really was. Anything that wasn't droids or the one mirror that I played. Actually, I only played one droids too. I dodged a droids in a pod, but then I had to play one in my lap. Those two suck. Everything else is pretty standard. It just does its work. But let's see. If you want me to, I can just go ahead and start going through what I played again.
Yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. Yeah.
So I ended up doing 3 pods. Everything was best of 1. You had to win out all 3 games. So it was 8-player pods every time you signed up. My first pod, I only got in my second round. Like my first matchup was against a U7 Shenron. And I think the scariest thing, just sitting down in front of a Shenron, is that you don't know what's inside of the deck until they play their first card. And the minute he dropped the 1-drop Goku, I was just sitting there thinking, I have to have a board presence before turn 5, or else I'm screwed. This is how I feel about playing against U7 in general. I have a buddy that plays U7 Frieza, so that's just kind of the mindset I get all the time.
Yeah, this was the Tournament Power 1-drop Goku, you're saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's Ready to Fight, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Ready to Fight Goku. So he just looks at the top 3. So as soon as he dropped that, I knew what he was playing, and I was just scared of Victory Strike, like turn 4, turn 5, because he did end up double objectioning. But despite that, and despite the amount of cards in his hand, he never got it off. And thankfully, like right around turn 4, when he didn't go off, when he had enough energy, I got a Deadly Defender down. Turn 5, he didn't get anything on the board, and then I got another one down, either turn 5 or turn 6. And when he had 5 cards left in deck, he just ended up scooping after he finished his turn because it was over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Demon Sword Janemba easily dealt with any threat he got on the board. Like, once he had built up a hope just trying to be able to go for game at one point. And when he couldn't get through, I popped it the next turn, and he had 5 cards, and he just conceded it.
What a poor boy.
I mean, it happens. A lot of people would sit down in front of me and go, "Oh, I know how to play against this deck. I'm not that scared," and then realize they didn't know how to play against the deck.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it takes some experience to play against Janemba, I feel like, and that simply just wasn't there when it came to nationals. I mean, now a little bit more, but still, it kind of applies.
Definitely.
Yeah. So what else did you play?
In that pod that I played against Heroes Storm, like I said, I couldn't find Crisis Crusher. I had a decent hand to start with against any other deck. I threw the whole thing away just hoping to find a Crisis Crusher.
Yeah.
Didn't find it. Yeah, I didn't find it. He went first, so I had one. It just didn't happen. I mean, you try your best. It didn't. So you're able to kind of muscle your way through on their first storm turn. Just barely with Crisis Crusher on the field, but not so much without him. Yeah, you take a lot of hits. You just start pitching stuff to your drop area, area so you can actually use Dimension Magic. It was a pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at this again, and we'll kind of go through the changes and stuff, but this is obviously for best of one, which is why we have, you know, the Kami and as well as Crusher both in this. You know, it could be either one at 3 or 4. But looking at this again for best of one, would you take out the 2 Raging Spirits on Gohan and then put these both to 3?
I would definitely consider it. In fact, I think the biggest issue I had with the deck was the Raging. Anytime I saw it, it got charged, which was a nice feeling to know I know what I'm charging for that turn, but when I actually kept it in hand or drew it off of a pseudo super combo, it always felt dead. It stunk to like have an empty board. Like if I didn't have a Deadly Defender on board, knowing that I'm not going to be able to drop the Janemba that can come out for 1 the next turn, you know, planning for, and saying, do I really want to put Gohan out on the field and then not be able to play Janemba for 1? Right. It was just so clunky.
Yeah,
so I could.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would have put Kami. I actually, just because Storm was so prevalent there, I probably would have at least ran 3 Crisis Crushers. But with what I had, I ended up putting 2 of the Crisis Crushers in, which, you know, when I got into my second pod, saved my life.
That's good. So
yeah.
So that's good. We'll kind of go through the changes for that. As far as like talking through the changes, and I'll kind of give my feedback, or not feedback, but like the other 2 decks that are similar to this and just different variants and what we could change for this. But for that matchup, or for the matchup that you're talking about, what happened there?
I played Hero Storm again immediately in my second pod.
All right.
You know, I was sat there thinking, oh, this is just what's going to keep happening. I'm going to have spent $40 at that point, and I'm just going to drop first round. I had Crisis Crusher in my opening hand, drop Crisis Crusher, and you still get smacked in the face a lot by a lot of Go-Tens, and he gains a ton of card advantage. But just not taking those extra hits from Bardock and watching him just play Bardock to take a life and do nothing else, it feels real good. I'm not gonna lie.
That's good. That's good. And he can never leave that Bardock on board too, because it's always just gonna die. Like it's always gonna.
Right. Yeah, you can't touch it. You can't do anything. So that match just basically went pretty straightforward. He tried to aggro me super hard on, I want to say I got to turn 4.
Okay.
And tried to aggro me super hard. He went first again, and I just got to turn 4, and I top decked, and I wiped his whole board.
You top decked what? You broke up there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I top decked a Kami, and I wiped his whole board, and he didn't really have an answer for that.
Okay, you just kind of cried there. He was just like, okay, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's.
But I give the guy props though. They were giving out big leader cards if he qualified, and he had. Well, actually, no, he was playing hero, so he already had the hero. I saw somebody else do it later with Black Mass Saiyan. Not Black Mass Saiyan, just regular Mass Saiyan. You know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry.
Bardock, Super Saiyan 3.
Yeah, Bardock. Yeah. That guy.
I actually really want that giant card. I've been seeing it for like $10. I'm like, I should not spend any more money on cards until the booster.
I'll talk to you later. I have a buddy that doesn't want it, and that's what he pulled.
Bye. All right.
But I had to give him credit because he had the giant hero, and he cut it so that he could put it into 2 top loaders and then flip it closed, so it was the size of a regular card to fit it in his deck box.
I've seen that with Gogeta. That actually sounds pretty cool.
It was cute. I liked it.
That's nice. Well, that's cool. Yeah. Did you end up winning that match or no?
Oh yeah, I won that match.
Okay. Oh yeah, because of Kami, right? Okay, that's good.
Yeah. I actually made it to my last round on that. Second match was straightforward. Just played against Hercule. Can't do a lot. If he can't get something to threaten me before he mills himself out, it's just the way the match goes. He can't combo to save himself without, you know, taking more cards out of his deck, and then when he either has to sacrifice cards in his deck to save his life, or he takes the hits, and those hits are almost always going to be crit. It's just the life when you play against Hercule and your Janemba. He didn't have an answer. That's all.
Yeah, I don't think it's like a easily 60-40 for Janemba against Hercule to me. I don't think it's an auto win. I think they can definitely play around it. But the whole premise behind Hercule is defense and draw power. So yeah, that's definitely, that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then I ended up losing round 3 to the mirror, and it really just came down to who got more Janembas off, and made me decide that if I were to restructure the sideboard, that I would put the unyielding trunks in the sideboard just for the mirror match, because that's what lost me the game, is that he could untap on his turn, I couldn't. And he was able to do a Janemba mill, a Janemba chain on as early as what? I think he did it on turn 2. And then I didn't see any of my 3 drops at all that whole game. So I got lucky. I got rid of most of his Psyche demons, and then he just happened to have one in hand, and so he was ahead of me the whole game on Janemba milling, and then he was just able to kind of threaten my life a little bit and force me to not have, as many defensive answers. And even if I had defensive answers, I always want to use them, because most of my defensive answers make me draw cards. He just got the advantage over me early. I wasn't able to get as many mills off. Right. It came down to the trunks, essentially. Yeah,
which makes sense. I mean, for that, and there's another card, but I'll probably remember it as we go through the deck itself. But the mirror match is pretty ass. Like, you have to make some good tech choices in your deck for one, and then the other part of it is most likely going second, because you're going to be on the turn or on the play immediately, starting out for the milling effect. So it's kind of an ass, kind of a shit situation, but that's the way it goes. Any other notable matchups?
Well, I did one more pod, and probably the game of my life was, I only made it the second round of that pod. Sadly, I would have won out there. Hercule would have been my 3rd match if I made it to the 3rd match. I'm not scared of Hercule. But my first match was against androids, and he was running Super 17 chain. I always just conceded my head before I even start that, and I was kind of hoping he would beat me as fast as possible at the time, so I had a chance, if I wanted to sign up for one more pod, since they were accepting entries until 9 o'clock. So it was getting ready to go on 8:30. Yeah. And so we're playing through the match, and honestly, and just heart in my throat the entire time. I thought I could have thrown up, just because I kept not losing. And he would chain into 17. I can tell you exactly why I lost the game, actually. It's coming back to me as I'm talking about it.
Well, if it helps you, I went through one the other I don't remember when. I was playing 17 and 18 with the Cell Chain in Super 17, and went against 2 Janembas, and both of them are 1 because of Super 17. So if that's exactly how it worked, where he chained into Super 17 even before then, using Cell Chain first and then Super 17, that shit's just crazy.
He lost because he didn't go ahead and go to do the full Cell Chain. I had 8 or 9 cards in my hand.
Okay.
He brings out the 5-drop, and I do what I always do. I try not to table talk when it actually counts, because I'm used to table talking at my locals when I play with my buddies, and we just dick around. We have fun. But I just forgo. I usually forgo that when I play serious, and I just happened to say, should I expect to drop down to 3 cards?
Mm-hmm.
He laughed at me and he said, yeah, that's actually the real question right now. He didn't drop me down to 3 cards, so I kept 8 or 9 cards in my hand. He popped something on my board. Nothing that mattered, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, geez, like, if he would have dropped me to 3 cards there and put on pressure with a double striker and then got Android 17, I'm sorry, Super 17 out the, like, next turn or two, I wouldn't have had an answer. But I sat around with answers in my hand all game. I kept a Mafuba from my opening hand all game until he swung in with his second Super 17 of that game and just said, okay, Mafuba and full hand. And he had like 3 or 4 cards in hand. And he was like, oh, I think that's it, but let me go through and do some math. And stalled it out for like an extra 5 minutes.
Wow.
I know, it was really strange. But he already knew he lost, and I didn't have time to sign up for another one since I knew I won anyway. So, and it wasn't actually 5 minutes. It was probably more like a minute and a half. It just felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, no, I just muscled through it, and I don't know how I did it because every time I tested against my buddy before we came, I just lost. Concede in my head when I play against. They can play everything from their drop area, and that's just usually how it goes. They don't have to cell chain me half the time. They just have to bring shit out.
Yep.
I drop a life. I mean, I take a life to hand if I have to use Dimension Magic for free, so I don't get hit with a crit. But I'm still losing 2 cards. You know, it's just that was his big misplay. But it was coming up the next day talking to me about that match that actually caught it. So it was nice to be able to put on a show. I don't. Yeah.
Well, that's nice. I'm glad that you pulled that one out. So why didn't you win that pod? Did you lose the next one?
I lost the next one. I got a little overconfident. It was a Shenron, and my buddies were like, "Dude, you play Shenron next. You've got this. It's Shenron." I let it go to my head a little bit, like, yeah, I'm gonna play against Shenron. He's gonna mill himself out. What else, you know?
Yeah.
He played the weirdest fucking Shenron deck I've seen.
Okay.
It was all hand destruction. That's all he did. He played one drop balls. Okay. He had the Broly package.
Okay.
And his main goal was to play one star balls early. Drop you to 2 with the I don't remember the name of the card. It's the 4-drop Broly that makes you discard 2 cards when it comes out. It's like a 4-drop, but he evolved it on top of the one that lets you evolve for cheaper.
Yeah, it's probably Bio Broly, because the 4-drop is from the Ultimate Box, and then the other 4-drop is a promo that KOs. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it was definitely Bio Broly, because he was just a big pile of sludge.
Nice.
You know.
How nice.
But his main strategy, while he was setting... My mic just screwed up on me. While he was setting... Yeah. I apologize.
You good?
While he was setting up for the win, because ultimately he was going for crit, triple attack, double striking... he would Child's Wish out the World Martial Arts tournaments, Yamcha. And so he'd take him from his life, make me drop it. Swing with critical. He had 3 of the, he had 3 of those assholes out by the time. And he knew I had Mafuba in hand. He watched me play that other game, and I'm playing Mono Blue, so of course I'm playing Mafuba. So he played around Mafuba for the longest time.
Just Mafuba everything. Just fucking, you have a 1-drop of Mafuba-ing it. Who cares?
Yeah, I almost did it on a Yamcha at one point, and I was like, no. As long as he has it, as long as I have it in my hand, what's he gonna do about it? But I almost did it on a Yamcha to get through the turn and hope that I pulled a Demon Sword, but I actually got stuck at 3 energy that whole game. I couldn't. I had 1 card in hand by the end of his 3rd turn, because I went first, if I remember.
Right.
And I also got a little overconfident because he miscounted the amount of Dragon Balls in his drop area, so he didn't he didn't wish until like a turn later. I thought, okay, had it in the bag. He just ended up destroying my whole hand. I was playing on one or two cards the whole game, one of which he figured was a Mafuba. And then, yeah, the only thing that would have saved me is that he had 5 cards on field, all 4 or less. If I would have top decked a Kami before he went for game, I would have won. He had 1 card in hand. I had 5 life. He had like 3 life. He had 10 cards or less in deck. If I top deck Kami, I had 3 energy open. Yeah. And it would have been, but I didn't, and that's just the way the game goes sometimes.
R.I.P. That's okay.
Yep.
But hand destruction is a huge counter to Janemba. It kind of relies on holding its counters, and as well as all of the draw, the pseudo super combos, and as well as just basically just having card advantage, you know. And you take that away, and it whittles down into later into the game. It is kind of a shitty thing to go through. So it's understandable. It's understandable. That one sounded a little bit tough, and that kind of puts us to, you know, the changes in the deck. Just like you were saying, if you only top deck Kami, that's again going back to the Raging Spirit, taking it out for best of 1 and putting 3 or 3.
Right.
Or, you know, I mean, depending on your meta, you know, take out 2, put 1 more Vegeta, and then 1 more Kami, or 1 more Crashes Crusher, whatever you want to say, or whatever you want to look through, right? So it's interesting to hear all the different matchups, and it kind of plays towards the disadvantages that Janemba can have. You know, it kind of loses a storm, and it kind of loses to hand destruction. So knowing those things, okay, because we didn't go through it before, I'm gonna go through it really quick before we talk about the changes.
Yeah, feel free.
So one of the things that people usually do is build up a board while you start milling. So when I originally came out with the deck, I main boarded Kami before anything else, because I just figured that people just kept building boards, and I couldn't do anything about it because it doesn't really have mass removal or attackers to attack their attackers other than Demon Sword to remove. So Kami was a huge thing to draw and then wipe their board, and just like you were saying, it's very useful. Same thing for Crashes Crusher. This was your ad, but I agree with this ad as far as for early game in Storm. Zena button really helps for the super combos and for Raging Spirit, but if you're taking that out, that makes sense. And then as well as the second turn and the next turn counters like Dimension Magic and Mafuba. Senzu Bean is just amazing. Everybody knows that. Dimension Magic, you already knows that. Tab 2. And Self Awakening if you need it, because some people do stall you out, so that way you don't have that pressure for 15k if you really need it. Psyche Demon, top 7 for Janemba, makes sense. Whis, just the extra counter. We'll come back to that. Mafuba, still really good in best of 1. To main board, Great Saiyan Man, super combo. Janemba, we'll come back to that. Vegeta for Daily Defender and Protect Your Leader, that makes sense. Raging Spirit, kind of already talked about. These two, play for 1, warp something, super combo. So looking through all this, knowing all the matchups and all that, what would you personally change, if anything?
All right. Well, I mean, I said it before, but the Raging Spirit, while I knew what I would charge every turn if I had one, it was a dead card in my hand most of the time. It was just too clunky to play around for me. There would be the good argument that I could run 3 Kamis, 3 Crisis for best of 1. Storms everywhere, and then like you said, people build boards. If they know that I'm playing cards that basically bounce themselves to the bottom of the deck, they can swing, they can I apologize, my mic's just being a jerk. They can swing in freely and, you know, force me to use cards in my hand, but when you're sitting on pseudo super combos, it doesn't make a difference. The other thing I considered, just, you know, if I was maybe like taking out the other 2 Raging Spirits, adding another Infernal Villainy, just because having maxed out on both pseudo supers would be nice, and then using the other Raging Spirit to have another Childish Heart, because I feel like you go the route of the other kind of Janemba builds that don't run it at all, and just play more utility. Yeah. And I personally like it. I can't see myself running the deck without Psyche Demon and Childish Heart Janemba. Psyche Demon being able to pull from the bottom when they just constantly have threats on board. Why wouldn't I? And then Psyche Demon's good early, and then just being able to do like turn 1 Psyche Demon, turn 2 Childish, and then still have my option. I'm not dying on turn 2 in most cases, and if I think turn 2, I'm not going to make that play. That's essentially the way I look at it. So being able to set up to pull out Demon Sword on turn 3, still have 2 open energy, take off a threat from board if they've tried to build it up, and then having the other Janemba that comes out for 1 afterwards, after you pop something, and just milling 6 on turn 3 can be really devastating for them. You know, doing gone 3 Kami, 3 Crisis Crusher, or I could have removed them for another Childish Heart and then another Infernal Villainy, and it would have been as simple as that.
Okay. That makes sense. Makes sense. I think, you know, going through all those kind of matchups and knowing what's in the format now, it makes all the difference. Just having that experience. So, you know, I don't think it really even comes down to playtesting, because it's really impossible to know, you know, what to expect, especially in nationals, LCQ or different or otherwise, right? So I don't think, if anybody's thinking that, I don't think it's that fair to say, you know, you should have watched out for this or blah blah blah. It's just hindsight 2020. So and I think you did well enough to understand and to get better not only in this deck but against other decks and what to expect. So that's good. And I think the other thing is that just like you were saying, the 1-drop and then 3-drop Janembas, Psyche Demon and Janemba, if you're going to be playing them by 4, makes sense. So that way you can kind of maximize, you know, getting out the other 2 Janembas as soon as possible, and then just making sure to keep that consistent throughout throughout your curves. And shout out to Pat O'Neill, who got the top 16, I think, with his Janemba, and I think his build is actually probably the approach I would take if I wasn't playing these 2. If I'm playing the chain, I'm playing the whole chain. If I'm not playing the whole chain, then I'm taking in some other stuff. And I think that's a really good approach for Janemba, just like you were saying for Unyielding Spirit Trunks, and then other tech options like Furthering Destruction Champa, so that way you can use with these 2. And going that route, I think that's really good. I think it also against the mirror, just like you were saying, and I think it'd be really effective. So good choices. The other 2 variants that I had, as you can see, are like a yellow variant. This is just like an idea of like what to do. Crusher Ball and Ranfran really are the main sort of things here in preventing yourself from attacking the leader to leader, because as soon as you attack the leader, you're giving them card advantage. But if they have 1-drop, 2-drops, 3-drops, you can tap those out and then let the leader attack, pressure that on to kill it and to mill 2 anyway, and then just keep going through that, denying card advantage. So that's one idea if anybody wants to take it that way. There's only 2 cell in this one just to reduce the numbers, but everything else is pretty much the same. You could take out the chain here and then just maximize on other stuff and other yellow things, especially Crisis Crusher. But the other thing, this is one that I took to locals. I think I went 3-2 with it, only because 1, I went against androids, so that was not fun. And then the other one was Janemba Mirror, which I went first, so you already know how that goes. And just a couple of changes, you know, the Cell, King Vegeta, and then Yajirobe kind of really helps out with this deck and against a surefire win against Shenron, because at the time a lot of people were playing Shenron. And then just protecting your leader as much as possible with Vegeta and then King Vegeta surprise attack, because you have 4 Cell anyway, might as well just use it as green energy anyway. So that was my sort of thought process for that. So I'm interested in seeing other builds come out and go from there. But that's pretty much it. How do you think the whole experience went anyway? Like nationals and being around that environment and playing and all that.
It helped me feel on a personal level that I'm not a bad player. I feel like I did exceptionally well despite not making it through. Anybody that watched me would tell me that I really didn't make a misplay most of the night. A lot of my losses came down to luck. I mean, matchups and luck. Like the Janemba mirror, if I would have gotten him like one more Janemba off than he would have, I would have won that match. You know, he was he was probably at 10 cards at the end of that matchup. He got 2 extra Janembas off on me. It's just the way the match went. Like the Shenron, like I said when I was talking about the U7 I played against, I don't know what I'm playing against when I sit down against it. So when he started doing hand destruction, I had no way of preparing for it, really. I just, like in a mindset wise, I just had to go, oh, this is what's happening. And when he started child's wishing the Yamchas, you know, I wasn't ready for it, and that's what happened. You know, that's just what kind of happened. I went down, I was playing with 2 cards in hand the whole game. Nothing I could prepare for, I just had to play through it. But getting through that Androids match with Super 17, that helped me a lot. I feel like I'm actually good at the game and not just that I coast by through locals or, you know, just playing strong decks or something. I feel like I actually know what I'm doing.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
Makes total sense. And that's a good feeling to have. And what do you think it was for the actual event? Like, did you attended the side events and all that, right?
So because I wanted to do a side event, I almost played for I had to end up taking my dog to the vet, so I decided not to spend extra.
How random.
I know. I got a phone call.
Don't you live in Ohio? Like,
I know, but I just got paid and I had to buy flu medicine already. It was a whole. That's a whole nother story, not about this game.
It's okay. It's all right.
I know. I really wanted to, and I almost justified it. But the money that I was gonna have for side events, I spent it to try one last time. And, you know, I would have rather have done that than to have gotten a mat and the event packs. As dumb as that sounds, because if I would have won out, then I would have gotten all that anyway.
Yeah, that too, right? Okay, that makes sense. Well, that's good. Well, we talked quite a lot. I'll end it here, and I really do appreciate you taking this deck and taking the time to go through it and entrusting me to build it. just know that it was the first of many versions, I guess, to the future. But
of course, I just wanted to say, actually, anytime anyone asked me, "Are you running unyielding trunks in that deck?" and I said, they would look at me sideways, but I just sat there saying no. I sat there in my own head saying no. I know what the deck does. It doesn't need it if it doesn't need to be aggressive. It doesn't make sense for me to clog up the deck unless I need to sideboard it in. Yeah,
and I think the only thing that unyielding trunks really has over like this build is to continue your plays for Childish Heart Janemba, and that's pretty much it that I can think of. I mean, maybe Kami, so you can play it turn 2. That's really about it. And yeah, that's it. I don't know. I mean, I'll revisit this deck other than the other 2 decks that I just showed. But wow, my dog. But the real thing is just, you know, just learning from the deck and learning the matchups that you have to go through.
Yeah, and I mean, I tried to get preparation in before I went. You know, on top of it, just playing real people that are out for just as much blood as you are, you know, just trying to make it in at that last minute. It's a completely different experience on top of sitting at locals and playing for some event packs and, you know, just enjoying yourself. It's a completely different environment that if you don't play in that all the time, you're not quite ready for as well. So creates a completely different atmosphere.
For sure. Okay. Well, that's all good information. And like I said, I'll close it up so that way this isn't too crazy long. I think it is already. But oh well. Hopefully everybody got some good information from this. Let me know what you guys think. Like, dislike, comment, subscribe if you're new. Radish, any closing thoughts? Anything else before we go?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Join the Discord, everybody. It's in the link. The link is in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.